Welcome one and all of the Same As community. I am John Jury, not behind the camera this time. I'm here with Miss Lovely Jeanine, a licensed acupuncturist, currently doing some acupuncture stuff with St. Matt's. Jeanine, welcome.
Thank you.
So, Miss Jeanine, I hear a lot about acupuncture. People think acupuncture, they usually think of, needles just being stabbed in them. You being a licensed acupuncturist, what type of acupuncture do you specialize in, if you specialize in it, or are you just like Miss Master Acupuncturist?
Well, that's an excellent question. I have a preference for and really like the results that come from community acupuncture. And community acupuncture is different from what you usually think of. Most people who have had acupuncture probably got put into a room, a practitioner came in, gave them some needles, and then left them for an hour. Community acupuncture, we come together, we sit in a circle, everybody gets acupuncture together in a very generalized way. So instead of, oh, my shoulder hurts, I need needles in my shoulder, or, oh, my knee hurts, everybody gets the same acupuncture, and it's for generalized wellness, to improve sleep and reduce anxiety. And the power of community acupuncture is in coming together as a community. So just in the same way that on Sundays we come together and we pray, or when we do baptisms, we come together as a congregation to do baptisms, it's an acknowledgement of we are more than the sum of the parts. There is power that comes with being together to focus on healing.
And I imagine, like when you're getting a shot, you want to get a shot with somebody, so that way it's like, yeah, needles, not that scary.
So the thing about when you go to the doctor to get a vaccination or to get a blood draw, those kind of needles are very different. They're very large, and they are specifically designed to rip and tear flesh because you're trying to put something in or take something out. But acupuncture needles are very thin, they're very tiny, and they're solid, and they're specifically designed to penetrate the skin without causing damage. So oftentimes the acupuncture needles, when you take them out, don't even bleed.
Yeah, I was wondering about that because I'm semi-familiar with acupuncture. Isn't it like you're trying to find particular nerves that you're trying to hit?
Well, it's not nerves, but it's acupuncture points.
Okay, so it's like, I imagine those would have to be, very tiny. Otherwise, it could, if you stab the wrong thing, then it's like, okay, you just lost.
They're very tiny. They're about the same width as a strand of hair.
Okay, yeah, I was looking at those. I got needles in my ears, by the way. You'll see that in the video. It's like, and honestly, they didn't feel that bad. I mean, I felt it, but it was just like.
Yeah, there's often a little bit of a pinch sensation. It's not even, I don't even find it as strong as like an ant bite. I mean, it's much less than that. It's just a little tiny sensation, and then sometimes there's a little bit of warmness that happens, but that's it.
Honestly, when I was getting the stuff in my ears, it feels no different from when I wear my headphones for an hour. And it's like, okay, is it really that bad? Come on, people. So, you mentioned sleep, anxiety, which I need in spades, by the way, people. I can't even handle it. I can't handle it. The world is scared. And then all this other, benefits of acupuncture. And besides, like, oh, my shoulder hurts, can you stab some needles in me to, I guess, wake up my arm or something? When you stab needles there, because to me they seem random.
They're not random, I assure you.
Okay, so
I spent 4 years in school studying this. It's not random.
Well, there you go. You see, that's why you're here. That's why we're learning together. This is the learning experience of people learning. I'm a very weird person, if you can tell. But
you be you.
Yeah, there you go. So specifically, example, like when I did the ear things, like where were the benefits of the ears?
So the particular protocol that I use for the ears is known as the NADA protocol. I think those letters stand for something, but I've forgotten what off the top of my head. But it is a protocol which is widely used in situations like people recovering from drug and alcohol dependency, people who are recovering from trauma. The organization that I do a lot of work with, Acupuncturists Without Borders, what they do is after a traumatic event, whether it be a natural disaster like a hurricane or a tornado, or a man-made disaster like a mass shooting, they set up community clinics like this, and everybody gets that protocol because it's very good for helping to alleviate grief and trauma.
Mm-hmm.
It's very good for generalized wellness and anxiety reduction.
Which we need a lot of that nowadays, by the way, I imagine.
There's an entire phenomenon known as secondary trauma.
Mm-hmm.
It's very common amongst first responders. For example, firefighters, police officers that are responding to these catastrophic events, and that they're exposed to so much trauma that the frontline people who've experienced are, that they develop the same physiological responses to trauma as do the people who were directly involved in the trauma. And personally, I think we've reached a point where, as a society, we're bombarded with social media and constant news coverage and instant news, that I think we're kind of getting to a point where we're all getting a little bit of secondary trauma. I mean, you're not old enough to remember it, but I remember that after the 9/11 attacks and the images of the planes going into the buildings were just on a constant loop on the news, that after a while my anxiety level was so high, and then somebody told me, turn the TV off, stop looking at it, you know what happened, you don't need to relive it over and over again, it's not good for you. I think that's a lot of what's happening in our society as a whole.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that, because it's like, I personally, and obviously on a much smaller scale, I'm not one of those millennials who blows everything out of proportion, okay? Just chill out, viewers. But, you know, it's kind of interesting because obviously with the news and everything, and it's like you only hear negative after negative after negative. You know, for me personally, I don't like to watch the news because it's like, I know what I'm going to get, so it's like, why watch it? But then it's like, you come in here and it's almost like, okay, everyone forget about everything, listen to some waterfall, their birdie little tweeting, and and you can just kind of just relax out, chill out, and do anything else. So I find that somewhat interesting, and I'm rambling, of course, but
That's okay.
yeah.
There is definitely benefit to taking some time out during the day and just sitting quietly and focusing on where you are in time and space, and just appreciating all the good stuff that your body does. It's very easy for people to focus on, oh, my shoulder hurts, or oh, I can't run as fast as I used to 10 years ago, or oh, I hate it that I have migraines all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But when you start to focus on the positive and say to yourself, hey heart, good job for beating all day today. Hey lungs, good job for breathing in and out at a regular pace. When you start to focus on the positive, it only just keeps building on itself. And then suddenly those things that seem like huge problems, they aren't so huge anymore.
It's funny, too, because me as someone who loves physics and math, I constantly think about how the higher universe mixes both God, science, magic, and physics all into this strange phenomenon which most people can barely comprehend, which is why I'm not going to tell you, don't worry. I won't go into a math debate. And then at the microscopic scale, it's like physics and everything else, it changes on itself to rules that we just think are impossible. And then you think about, okay, what's happening here? We think, okay, everything's based on Newtonian physics, but then if you look inward at the human body, it's kind of like its own strange mix of science and magic going on. And is that me talking crazy, or does that
No,
make sense?
I think part of it is that the human body is just way more complex than we as a scientific community can fathom. And every time the scientific community learns a little bit more about how part of it works, they discover just how much they don't know. And my favorite example, because I used to work in public health with a bunch of millennials
Okay.
who were doing HIV outreach. And I was a kid when the HIV epidemic hit. And if you look back on what the scientific community understood about how the human immune system works in 1981, what they didn't understand about how the immune system works, you could just about squeeze into the Grand Canyon.
Wow.
And what is now understood about the immune system is so light years ahead of what it was then. And the other thing, though, that the scientists, the immunologists have figured out is they still have so much more. Every time they answer one question, they find 10 more sitting behind it. And so I think it's that exactly what you're describing, is there's a big unknown piece to it. And we might never know it. I don't know.
Well, the rules just constantly change, and there's always like, okay, well, the rule is this, but then, oh wait, here's
Except when it's not.
Here's 50,000 different exceptions, and it's like, I don't know. I just find that interesting, and you know, you're basically literally tapping in with a little needle, like, okay, poke.
So that's the really interesting thing, is that acupuncture, you know, there's not entire consensus about how far back in time acupuncture traditions go, but there is well-established writings on the topic of acupuncture dating back 3,000 years. And as acupuncture continues to be practiced, scientists continue to study acupuncture, trying to understand it. And there'll be some new study that comes out, oh, we figured out this mechanism of why this does this. And it's like, yeah, but those guys figured out that it does do that 3,000 years ago. They may not have understood the why, but they understood the what. So we keep doing the what.
Yeah. It's like, well, it is like, you know, hey, doctors, we're smart and we figured something out, and then acupuncturists are just like, yeah, we already knew that, so. And I mean, most of our inventions in math come from societies that are thousands of years old.
Well, what I found really interesting, so I went on this healing exchange trip with Acupuncturists Without Borders, and we went to the Yucatan Peninsula and had an opportunity to study with traditional Mayan healers.
Okay.
And their traditional medicine also dates back thousands of years.
Cool.
And one of the Mayan healers said to us, the reason why there's so many people who are sick today is because we don't spend enough time in nature.
Really?
That disease happens when we leave nature, that we need to be in nature. And on Sunday, during the family service, one of the folks from St. Matt's got up to talk about the men's hiking trip that's coming up at the end of February. And he began by saying, God is in nature. And I thought, wow, here are two completely different ways of approaching spirituality and God, and they turn out to not be so completely different after all.
No, I mean, if you really think about it, you know, the difference between, I guess, what the traditional form of civilization is and outside of nature is maybe sometimes just a few inches of cinder block, wood, metal, and drywall, and then it's like, throw a sledgehammer through the wall, you're outside.
There you go.
So,
Or, just open the door.
I mean, I prefer the hammer.
Maybe cause less damage to the building.
That's just relative. I mean, and there are some buildings that need to be damaged anyway.
I suppose.
Yeah, it's like, come on, man. Walls are limiting, man. Limiting to society.
Yes, but they're also limiting to the rain and keeps it off our heads.
Rain. If that's the only thing, modern day minds have to worry about, it's like, come on. Because like, they had the 2012, we were supposed to end already, but
So we actually did have a talk with one of the Mayan healers.
Mhm.
And he's actually done throughout, I mean, he's quite old, and he's like 78 or 79 now, and he's spent quite a lot of his life translating the Mayan hieroglyphs and translating the work that was done by the Franciscan monks, taking the hieroglyphs and putting it into a text form.
Mhm.
And what he said is that the calendar, it didn't mean that the world was going to end in 2012, it meant that the era that we were in was coming to an end.
Oh, okay.
And what he said was that the movement into the next era would, at the beginning, be highlighted by a lot of chaotic change and upheaval.
Take from that what you will.
We've had a lot of chaotic change and upheaval in the last 6 years.
Yeah.
There's definitely been a kind of worldwide shift, I think.
Yeah. Apple has fallen behind, by the way, and they're now charging $1,400 for new smartphones. That to me is just like, that should be a crime. We should charge them before a tribunal council.
Well, I don't think it's quite that bad.
I mean, like I say, I'm a tech head, so, and I'm weird, so you know. So you mentioned acupuncturists beyond borders.
Yeah, acupuncturists without borders.
Acupuncturists without borders, sorry. And then they also have doctors without borders.
Mm-hmm.
Is the acupuncturist, is that similar to?
In mission of bringing help and healing to people regardless of where they are, yes.
Okay.
But the two organizations are not affiliated.
Okay. Well, we would hope not, because I think doctors like needles just a little too much.
Well, I mean, I think that the work that Doctors Without Borders is really valuable. They tend to go into places where people need shrapnel removed from their shoulders. And quite frankly, if you have shrapnel on your shoulder, you don't want me helping you, right? Not initially. You need a doctor who can help put you back together.
I'm just saying they like sticking people with needles a little
bit,
you know. So, all right, I had a thing. Okay, so not to get a little political, but Acupuncturists Without Borders.
Yes.
We have a lot of like Syrian refugees, and we have a lot of, you know, stuff like the migrant caravan, and then we have a lot of stuff now here, which, you know, I won't go into. You look that up if you want to, viewer. Maybe chat knows. So, and you mentioned also kind of acupuncture as a community activity.
Yes.
Do you think that acupuncture might play a large role within whatever, helping Syrian refugees with maybe a little bit of trauma, or migrant caravans, or maybe people just agreeing to, okay, forget about your beliefs and just sit down and relax? And
So I'm glad you asked me that. Acupuncture Without Borders actually has done a trip to Greece to do community acupuncturists within the refugee camps for the folks who've come across the Mediterranean trying to escape from places like Syria. There's a very nice video about it on YouTube. And specifically, what the people in the video say, and what I heard when we were in the Yucatan helping, because we went into very tiny, very poor villages that are marginalized. And what they said was not just that the acupuncture is helpful, but to know that there are people who are out there who care, who want to help, gives them hope.
that is very interesting, because it's like two different medicines essentially. It's like, okay, you know, we're gonna help you relax, and then it's like, hey, we care about you, you know?
There's incredible power just knowing that somebody cares about you.
And then yeah, that's, wow. Sorry, my mind is blown right now, and I can't formulate words.
That's okay.
I can't. Oh man.
I broke John.
Great.
Sorry.
That's great. Now I think that's a good place to end it because I can literally not think of any words. I think I'm going to go home and either cry or think or just mindlessly think.
Maybe a little of both.
Yeah, with just maybe like a gallon of ice cream, just scoop that sucker in there. So, thank
There's
you.
incredible healing power in ice cream too.
There you go. Thank you, Miss Jeanine, for sitting down with us and for the wonderful acupuncture, by the way. Very good. My ears have never felt
More loved.
so amazing. I feel so. Thank you, St. Matt's people.